It's counting me in. I'm gonna play the promo. We're gonna do it all over again.
Hey, everybody, it's me. I'm Dr. Shirley Davis coming to you live from Carpinteria, California, out here at LinkedIn Live. It is so great to be back on set after 3 years. But look at this amazing set. I just wrapped up my 6th course, and tomorrow I'm going to start on my 7th. But I'm excited to be back here working with a phenomenal production team. I'm going to look forward to sharing more content with you, so stay tuned.
One. I'm waiting on you. Action. Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Shirley Davis. I am so thrilled and excited. Well, look, I'm not in Carpinteria anymore, but I was there in January shooting my 6th and 7th course. I'm really excited about the next one that's coming out, and I'll tell you about that one at the end. But hello, it's great to see all of you. I know you're coming in with me from all around the world. I've gotten wonderful messages from you. From those of you who have taken so many of my other courses, I've got courses on how to get a seat at the table and make it count. I've got one on leadership, inclusive leadership. I've got one on developing leadership accountability and how to develop a professional, diverse network, several of them. And then I'm working on 2 more. Look, I am thrilled because this topic on leadership couldn't be more important than it is today. Leadership is the reason why people either come to work for an organization or why they leave. And I don't know about you, but I have worked for some terrible, toxic, non-inclusive leaders that have thrown me under the bus, have taken all of my ideas and they took the credit for them. Or I've had leaders who just didn't see me, meaning they did not see me. I've had leaders who overlooked the work that I was doing and who just didn't share with me the value that I was working hard to deserve, and certainly didn't give me the pay, the promotions, and the opportunities that I worked so hard for. So this topic on leadership is key and critical. It's a course that I believe every single person from every seat should be taking. Leadership is not just a title, it's not just about power, position, and authority, but leadership is something that all of us have traits and we all have skills and potential to be great leaders. The question is, what kind of leader are you? If I ask the people who work with you and the ones who work for you, for those of you who are people leaders, I wonder what they would say about the kind of leader you are. Would they say that you're an inclusive leader? Would they say that you are a leader that really looks for the untapped talent inside of them? Are they ones that really care about who you are, the leaders that have vision, and those who have emotional intelligence, those who are transparent, real, and authentic? Are you that kind of leader? Because today's new generation of talent says that they want to work for the kind of leader that really does help them to grow, to be better, to expand their thinking, to build their skills and competencies, and who really does see them. We want to be seen and not just heard. I don't want to have a seat at the table and be invisible. I want to be seen, heard, and I want my perspectives and ideas to be valued. So this is what leadership is all about. Leadership is something, like I said, all of us can lead from different levels and from different seats in the organization. So here's the reality. When we do a lot of work in my organization, I am president and CEO of SDS Global Enterprises, SDS, Strategic Development Solutions. We work with all kinds of corporations, organizations, nonprofits, higher education institutions, and even individuals. I work with boards, I work with senior executives, all the way down to the entry-level positions, emerging leaders as well. And one of the things that we continue to find is that people don't leave bad jobs. They leave bad leaders or ineffective leaders or even toxic leaders, and they leave bad cultures, workplace cultures. So it couldn't be more important. And guess what? One really drives the other. Leaders are thermostats in the organization. You're the ones that create the temperature. You're the ones that help people to really experience the environment every day when they come to work. What are they experiencing when they come in? Is it a culture where people do have a voice, where they feel like there's psychological safety? Do they feel like they're heard? Do they feel like their talents, gifts, and strengths are really leveraged? And do they feel a sense of belonging and connection to you and to the organization? You're the ones that create that as a leader. So look, here in this course, this isn't a new course. Leadership Foundations is actually one that's been around for a while, but because so much has changed over the last 10 years, let's say over the last 3 years. So much is changing in our environment, our workplaces, our workforces, our marketplaces, and our communities. Leaders have to change as well. If you're the same leader that you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you need to upgrade. You got to enhance and you've got to reinvent yourself even as a leader. So, in this course, and I had the pleasure of writing the first one, and now I got an opportunity to refresh it, upgrade it, update it, and make it more relevant even today. So, in this course, I've got a couple of titles that I think is really, really important that I didn't even have in the first one. Some of them I did, and others I didn't. So the course opens up with the changing role of leadership in a disruptive world. So I want you to think about it. And if you will put it in the chat, I'd love to hear from you as well. Is what are some of the disruptions that we've experienced over the last 3 years that has really shaped and changed and redefined what leadership looks like? Just give me a couple of examples and a couple of ideas, right? Don't demographic shifts, don't hold back. I want to hear, how is your role as a leader changing as the world around us has changed as well? That's important. The other next one that I have in it is, so that's the opening of the course. And then I go into talking about, how do you lead yourself? Why is that so important? Look, you can't lead others if you can't lead yourself. I always heard the phrase that says, you can't teach what you don't know, and you can't lead where you don't go. So as a leader, you got to do your work. So it really starts with you first. And when I talk about leading yourself, that's about three things. One is, do you understand your own purpose, your own why? What drives you? What makes you get up in the morning? What is the thing that gives you that level of satisfaction, meaning, and fulfillment every day? Is it leading people? Look, if you don't have a passion for leading people, if you don't have the temperament, the disposition, the attitude, or the competencies to lead other people, you need to vacate that job, give it to somebody else who really does love leading others. Some people are just good in look, they're good at individual contributors as individual contributors. So important to lead yourself. The first thing is understanding your why. The second thing about leading yourself is understanding too, what is your vision in life, right? How are you showing up every day? Your purpose is sort of why you exist, why you were born, right? Because you were all born with a very specific purpose. And then your vision is, what will success look like? What will the legacy be that you leave behind? What is your vision for how you live and make decisions every day, which is also informing, how do you treat other people? And then the third thing are your values, right? You've got to have some very specific values in which you live by every day. I love the fact that I've had to do my own work, but I've learned from some great leaders on what to do, but I also learned some things of what not to do. So, for example, for me, I love to tell people too, you got to have your vision. My vision statement is to be a world renowned thought leader on the global workforce that delivers transformational value in the areas of organizational leadership, high performance, and personal reinvention. I hope that I have had that impact in your life over the years that you've known me, heard me speak, or read some of my articles, or even allowed me to coach you and do some consulting with you. That's my hope and prayer, is that I've always left my organizations and I leave people that I have the opportunity to interact with, that I leave them better. I leave them with tools and skills and competencies and confidence to be a better leader, to be a better person. So that's my vision. Vision provides clarity for the future while it's directing us to place our attention in the right place, and certainly in the present. And as I talk about values, I want to know from you, what are your values? What do you stand for? Because as a leader, you have to have values so that people will see how you live them out every day and they want to align with your values. Values are the standards in which we live by, and they are the characteristics, the behaviors, and the beliefs that motivate us, and they help guide our decisions. So for me, some of my top values, I love to hear some of yours, but the things that drive the decisions that I make, they inform the way that I live and show up every day. Integrity, right? That's an important value for me. Integrity is, that trait that when you are not even being observed or no one's looking at you, you still do what's right. You do what's right because it's the right thing to do. My other value is trustworthiness, also authenticity. I'm one of those kind of people that what you see is what you get. I like to be open and transparent, and I keep it real and raw about my experiences, my failures, my successes, my lessons learned. I don't have a problem sharing some of those things because I've learned from those things. And then a couple of my other values is faith, determination, and perseverance. So, again, what are some of yours? When you develop this kind of your purpose, when you develop your value and you understand your vision, this really does help you to be that kind of leader that can show up every day and really make a difference. So the next part of the course that I have, so not only is it the changing role of leadership in the disruptive world, I talk about leading yourself, but then the other one is I have is called demonstrating emotional intelligence, talking about the importance of self-management, right? So that's why I started first with leading yourself. But we know that emotional intelligence, also known as EQ, which many of you who've studied this, you know that Daniel Goleman, who is an American psychologist, was one that popularized the term. And it has several components, right? So it's all about self-awareness, right? And how do we pay attention to our own emotions? But how do we also understand our triggers? And also, what are some of our own strengths and weaknesses? And humility. How do we walk every day in a level of humility? The second thing, too, around emotional intelligence is also the ability to remain emotionally stable and sound when you're dealing with disruption or dealing with conflict or dealing with change, controlling your own behavior, even despite your emotional state. And certainly admitting your mistakes when you know you've made some. That's about taking accountability. So that's self-regulation, which Daniel Goleman talks about. I talk about it in the course as well. And then the other one is motivation. What drives you? What makes you get up in the morning? What gives you fulfillment and joy and satisfaction in life? Why is that so important? One is we try to motivate other people, but how are you going to do that when you're not motivated? So you got to know why work is important to you, why what you're doing makes a difference. And it helps to affirm your values as well as it acts in alignment with them. It helps you to remain optimistic and positive, especially when doing so is even difficult. So motivation is an important part of emotional intelligence, and so is empathy. That's the fourth one. Empathy is about knowing how you show up with your emotions and avoiding judgment and feeling that with others, right, whenever it's appropriate, helping to put yourself in the other person's shoes and try to understand it from their perspective. That helps you to be a great leader. And then I also talk about the fifth one, which is social skills, right? That's about practicing vulnerability and giving praise and recognition and acknowledgement when people do well, doing it without reservation and doing it without intimidation or feeling threatened because someone else did it better than you, right? A good leader knows how to hire people that are smarter than they are and got more experience. One of my best leaders, who you'll hear from in just a few minutes, he was my best boss ever. And one of the things that he said to me was, he said, Shirley, I don't care how fast you're going. I just want to know where you're going so I can support you. But he was also very vulnerable. He admitted when he was wrong. He always wanted to know how I was doing, but he managed conflict in a very equitable way, very sensitive way. And I love the fact that he just showed that care and concern about my own personal life as well. So those are the kinds of things that are important in emotional intelligence. So that's the one of the other ones that I hit on. Another piece that I talk about in this course is building a diverse team and maximizing performance. I think you all know we're living in a much more diverse, multicultural, multi-generational, global workforce. We're working different ways. We think differently. We come from different backgrounds and experiences. We have different cultures. We have different ways of working and different ways of getting developed. We want development. So we have different needs and expectations. So one of the things that I talk about in the course under building diverse teams is recognizing that the world around us is changing. The talent looks different, but the talent also has different expectations when they come to work for you. So it's important for us to understand what that is. To assemble a team, what I call a team of Clydesdales, right? Rock stars, that you bring in people who have the skills, the expertise, and the experience without regard to their race, their gender, their ethnicity, their age, their stage in life, right? You want to bring in people who can bring in different and various and diverse perspectives, because we know that when you have diverse perspectives, you help come up with better outcomes. So key and critical to maximizing performance is bringing that diverse group together. We know that when you do that, you're bringing a team together that's much more smarter, more creative, and solves more complex problems. And there is so much research out there that talks about the power of more diverse, heterogeneous, well-managed teams and the impact that that has to your return on investment, your return on sales, and your return on equity. Couldn't be more important. So there's some practical strategies on how do you do that. And I talk a bit about that in the course, like, for example, hiring differently and the importance of being flexible and fostering trust and confidence and psychological safety. All of those are key and critical when we're talking about building a diverse team. Also, I hit on leadership styles, right? How important it is to recognize that you got to be a flexible leader and you have to be a situational leader. It can't be one size fits all. You can't treat everybody the same. We all want to have equal treatment. We're talking about that under the law, but we have to also recognize that people are at different skill levels, competency levels. They've got different experiences, different expectations, and we have to treat them differently according to their skills and their needs and develop people differently and give them different feedback, right? So all of those things I think you get, right? So we have to be open when we're talking about different leadership styles is, we have to understand how is it that we direct, how is it that we correct, and how is it that we reward performance. So that piece is awesome around leadership style. So just know that that's an important piece that we all have to understand. What's your leadership style? Ken Blanchard hits on a number of those. That model is probably 30 or 40 years old. We've been using it. It's the oldest framework around leadership styles, but it is still relevant today. Whether your style is directing, whether it's coaching, whether it is supporting, or whether it's delegating, there's more leadership styles and a lot of models that are out there, like the leadership trait theory, the behavioral theory, transactional versus transformational leadership. You hear about servant leadership and empathic leadership. All of those are important, but what's really key and critical is that you know what your leadership style is and where do you have some gaps, where do you have some development needs. I also hit on some other key skills and competencies like strategic thinking. I talk a lot about establishing trust, not only establishing it, but how do you rebuild it when it's been broken? Can I tell you, in all the work we've been doing with consulting with clients and doing inclusion and engagement surveys, and we've been doing focus groups and talking to staff at all levels, this is one of the areas where I really, really see we've got some opportunities. Trust is at an all-time low inside of organizations. Part of that came from the disconnect, and sometimes leaders were not connecting with their staff during the pandemic and when people were shut down and people were going through a lot of trauma, going through a lot of shifts and changes and disruptions. That was the time that we needed to have a lot more trust. We always hear the saying is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And establishing trust is about that care and feeding, but it is core to any relationship in any organizations. And so for starters, you got to know how to communicate clearly, openly, and honestly. You got to lead by example. You got to live out the values. You got to treat people with respect. And all of these aspects are key and critical around how do we make sure that not only we keep trust, but also how do we rebuild it when it's been broken. So if you have a team of people that you work with, or that work for you as direct reports, I want you to assess what's the level of trust on your team. 1 to 5, 5 being absolutely, we got amazing trust, or 1 being we need a lot of help, we have broken trust. So I want us to, again, think about what are some of the things that we can do to build trust if it's been broken. So I see we have a question in the chat box. I'm looking forward to getting more of your questions. So as I've already shared some of these things that are in the LinkedIn Learning course on leadership foundations, put in a couple of questions that you might have. I will look forward to answering them. Look, ask the author, ask the facilitator. I'm here live and in person to ask you questions. So someone says, I'm adding responses to the bottom of your screen. I'm sorry, that's not the one. What was it? Oh, they said they put it in there. So let me see. Oh, the comment. Thank you. I see so many of you in here. Let's see. Is it possible to mix leadership styles? So that was the one that they put in the comment. Yes, absolutely. And you should. Thank you for the question. You should be flexible in your leadership style. So you'll have people on your team who may be type A personality, type B personality. You may have some that are extroverts, introverts, or ambiverts. You may have people who need a lot more hand holding. They may be new to the team or new in the organization, and they need you to give them a lot more care and feeding. You may have some people who lack confidence, lack a sense of self-esteem. So you have to adjust your leadership style to meet and fit that. So how do you do that? You need to get to know each and every one of your people individually and get to know the people who you work with, not just the ones who work for you. A really good leader, this is the vulnerability, authenticity, and transparency that we can exercise as a leader. And that is that you want to ask people, what is it that they need? How can you best support them? What are some of the things that they're struggling with? Ask them to share that with you. Ask them where they see themselves in a year from now or 2 years from now. What are some of the skills and competencies that they have that you may not be tapping into? What are some of the things that's keeping them up at night, right? We always ask leaders that, but ask your staff that. Quite frankly, what I'm giving you are some questions that you would ask in what we call stay interviews. Stay interviews. Dick Finnegan wrote the book called The Power of Stay Interviews. But I encourage you to do that when you have different people with different skill sets. They got different backgrounds and experiences. You as a leader have to mix up your leadership styles. Even when we talked about, for example, the leadership model of directing, coaching, supporting, and directing, all of those are things that you need to do. Some people may be very skilled, experienced, and they don't need as much hand holding. You support them. You'll have some people who are, they do need a lot of confidence building, trust building. They need you to teach them the mechanics and the function of the work. So you will have to do a lot more of the supporting, hand holding, and giving feedback and not micromanaging, but checking in often to see how they're doing. And then you'll have your superstars, your rock stars. All you need to do with them is delegate and acknowledge and reward them, right? So yes, thank you for that question. Good, good, good. I'm loving some of the comments in here. Someone says, happy Wednesday. I'm just joining. This is good and very needed. Yep, stay interviews, the power of it. Love, love, love that. And then someone else says, what are some tips to build broken trust? Oh, that's so good. First of all, you got to admit that the trust is broken, right? So I'm big on one, do what you need to do when you know that trust has been broken. Find out why it was broken. How was it broken? Because that's going to be important for you to really help rebuild it, because that's an important part of it. Sometimes it may mean apologizing if you did something wrong, or if there was an oversight on your part, if you had a blind spot that you just didn't know about and it broke the trust. When someone comes and gives you feedback, be willing to listen, take it in, and make the adjustments that you need. But also ask them, what can I do, or what can we do to rebuild this trust, right? And I know that a lot of times as a leader, it's not just only about the trust, but it's how you talk to people. It's how you communicate with them, whether it's enough communication or not, or whether it's communicating the ways that they need to be communicated to. But also trust is about just giving people the respect and treating them with dignity, right? And recognizing them. Like I said, we want to be seen. See me. I don't want to be invisible. So when that trust has been broken, look, establish it. So you know what? I've done just some feedback over the last couple of weeks. I've talked to a few of you, or let's say we've done the engagement survey, and we found out through some of the written comments and through some of the results from the quantitative questions that were asked, we found out that we do have some work to do around trust. So let's talk a bit about how we can rebuild that trust, right? So ask them too. Don't always come with the prescription. Don't always come with the answers. Have some in the back of your head, one or two. But I found that rebuilding trust is always about asking people what they need in order to rebuild it as well. Thank you. That was a good question. And I talk a bit more about that in that course. And I ask you to pause for a moment and to think about some of the things that you can do to rebuild trust if it's been broken. And I have you journaling and writing in your notebook throughout the course as well. And then I also give you some scenarios to think about, some things that I've done, even with my team or with my clients. And I ask you to think about some of those things if you were in that same situation. So thanks so much. That was a great, great question. Let's see if I have any others in here. Riddick, what? Riddick is in. I love. Hi, Dee. Good to see you, Charlene. It is amazing to see some of my colleagues, friends, mentees, clients. Awesome. I see Jurgen. Oh, good to see you, Jurgen. Arif, good to see you as well. I just wanted to acknowledge a few of you. I see Dolores. Hello, 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 my friend. I've got some oldies but goodies on here today. I've got some of my clients. Really excited to see all of you. Thank you so much for your constant support. If you are on LinkedIn, I encourage you to not only take it for yourself, hey Charlene, but also make sure that you have other leaders in your organization take this as well. It's not limited to new leaders. It's not limited to senior and executive leaders. It is for every leader. And I want you to think about some of these. So a couple of other things in the course, and then I want to see if there's any other questions. Some other areas that I cover in the course: strategic thinking, establishing trust, communicating with impact and influence. Are you a good communicator? That's so important, right? Do you know how often to communicate? Do you know how to adjust your communication style like you do your leadership style? Adjust it to the type of workers and the team that you have. Some people want to hear all the facts. They want all the details. Some people just want to have the Cliff Note version. They just want a quick summary. Some people want more of your time and attention. Others don't need as much. They're more independent. How do you communicate? Some people want you to communicate via email. Some want text messaging. Some want face-to-face, right? So there's multiple ways that we need to communicate. But here's the thing. Communicate often, communicate consistently, and communicate accurately. All of those are important, and I talk about more of that in the course. I also talk about the importance of building your own business acumen, right? How much do you know about the company? How well can people look to you as your own subject matter expert with the expertise that you have? What are some of the other things that you know about the company? Do you read the annual report? Are you clear about these strategic initiatives and imperatives of the company? Are you helping to align the work that you do to drive and enable the success of the organization? Do you know the leaders up, down, and across the organization? It's not enough to just know your leaders in your division. But I'm telling you, what was key to my success in companies when I was working 30 years in corporate America was getting to know leaders up, down, and across the organization. And not only that, this is about building relationships too. It's not enough to just get to know the other leaders. They do help you build your business acumen. And I encourage you to work in other areas, like get on different projects that will help stretch you and grow you, but also help you to develop a better understanding of how the company makes its money, how it serves its customers and clients, how it increases and makes itself more competitive, how it builds the future, right? The skill sets that are going to be needed. That's what you need to do. Too many times I ask leaders, what are the top 3 business objectives in your organization? Or I'll say to them, what's keeping your CEO and your executive team up at night? Or I'll say to them, what are some of the ways that the work you do every day is enabling the organization's success and the priorities of the organization, right? So it's important to know some of those things, but too many times people can't answer that. Too often times we work in a silo and we want to be recognized and noticed, but part of that is you got to know the business and you got to know why the company exists, how the company makes its money, how the company adds value, where the company is going in the future, and how you are going to help them get there. Some other things I talk about: leadership competencies in this 2023 and beyond is you got to be an empathetic leader. Empathy is one of the most important skills that I've seen now that workers say that they want and they expect in their leaders, but they see that's lacking. Empathy, the ability to put yourself in other person's shoes, the ability to have a level of care and concern, even if it's nothing you've done before or you can't relate, but it's just trying to understand the emotions, the feelings that people may be having, some of the challenges and the issues that they have, and trying to put yourself in that position. Empathy is, I say, one of the hardest soft skills that you must have in today's new generational workforce. The other one is I talk about is the ability to influence others. How do you get people to do something that they may not want to do or don't even know that they have to do it? How do you get them to change their mind from where they are to where you want them to get to? That's influencing others. How do you do that with clients? How do you do that with your team members? But also, how do you influence your boss, your supervisor, influence senior leaders, whether you need a promotion? How do you influence that? How do you influence clients to buy from you if you're selling products and services? How do you influence others to see you with the level of credibility that you have? How do you see yourself influencing for a new job that you're looking for? Every day we are influencing. And so I want you to think about the level of influential skills that you have to be able to help people change, to see things differently, and to help make people think differently as well. I see another question. How would you approach individuals who resist change? That's a really good question. Y'all know change is really, really hard. Thanks, Jurgen, for that question. It's really hard. And look, I always say only wet babies like change. Look, but we have to recognize all of us have to be change agents. All of us have to reinvent ourselves. And we have to be on a path of constantly upgrading and enhancing and becoming a better version of who we are. Sometimes people resist for different reasons, right? Sometimes it's all about, hey, I don't understand it. I need more information. I don't see the value. I don't see the impact. What's in it for me? People always want to know what is the impact and the motivation for them, right? They want to have information to make an informed decision. Sometimes they want, no, not sometimes, more often than not, they want to be a part of the change when it's happening or before it happens, not that change happened to me. I always say there's three kinds of people: those that make things happen, those that watch things happen, and those that wonder what happened. So we as leaders and individual and working professionals, we all have to be on that team of making things happen. But in order to get people to come around to see it and want to change, you've got to provide for them the what's in it for them. You got to help them to see that their work, their efforts are really important. Help them to see how they're contributing to the overall success of the department, the division, the unit, or the organization at large. But you also, look, here's the reality. Sometimes you got to help them understand what's the consequences of not changing. What is the missed opportunity of not changing? So share with them, yeah, the positives of the change, why the change is necessary, and what the change is going to do, but also what's the impact if we don't. All right. So that's very important. Like I said, we all got to change, because if you're the same people you were 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you got to keep changing, right? You got to be on that journey of constantly becoming a better person. Someone says, I influence by honesty, sincerity, communication, empathy, and authenticity. You absolutely right, Eric. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's exactly what we have to do. Look, leadership has been around forever. We've been talking about leaders for decades and millennials. But what we have to recognize is that the leaders that existed 20 years ago, and I've been in HR for 30 years, and there's a different competency model that we have today than I had 10 years ago when we were talking about leadership competency models. So these are some of the skill sets and competencies that we all have to have. So a couple of other ones, right? I talked about influencing skills, also leading change. I talked about that, but through agility and resilience. You got to have agility, right? That agility is the flexibility to be able, to dodge whatever you need to do, to move at an instant, to be reactive. Sometimes you need to be reactive, but also you got to be proactive. But you also got to be able to bounce back. You got to be able to make it happen, turn it around, and make it work for your good. That's important. Also, we got to be able to cultivate cultures. As leaders, we got to cultivate cultures of inclusion, belonging, cultures of high performance, and cultures of safety, psychological and physical and emotional safety. That's so important. And I can't talk to you enough about that. I think all of you who know me know that I am a guru and a workforce expert as it relates to the changing workforce and how do we enhance the workplace culture. How do we make sure that we're tapping into the talent where all of us can thrive and not feel excluded, and not feel like we don't have accommodations or accessibility, that we don't have the level of respect, and we certainly don't have equity. We got to be able to do that. Some other skills and competencies, key and critical, that we weren't talking about all of these, 10, 20 years ago, is also how do you have really difficult conversations, or uncomfortable conversations, right? Or those conversations that we haven't always been given permission to talk about. Some things, like we're talking about these taboo topics today, we're leaning into some topics today and conversations today we weren't doing 10, 20 years ago. Y'all know we weren't talking about psychological safety. We weren't even talking about mental illness and mental well-being in the workplace like we are today. We weren't talking about trauma-informed care and solutions. We're talking about that now. Yes, we're talking and asking more questions about people's we're talking about their disabilities or their different abilities. We're talking about neurodiversity, LGBTQ plus, IA, right? All of these conversations we're having in a way we hadn't had before. And we're now teaching you. We do this a lot with our clients. We're teaching you how to lean in and to be able to have conversations about those taboo topics and those areas where we're uncomfortable. Politics, religion, disability, mental and emotional well-being, even mental illness. Yes, we got to be able to talk about those, because when we say bring your full self to work and bring your best self to work every day, we're bringing all of that with us. We're bringing our unique cultures, our backgrounds, our experience. We're bringing our unique attributes. And that's what actually adds value to the company. That's what makes the organizations thrive, is when you can tap into some of that untapped potential and bring in new and different and fresh perspectives and ideas that you hadn't before, and that you can meet the needs of changing clients, customers, donors, and members in your community. Also, managing conflict, right? Yeah, that kind of goes along with how do we have difficult conversations, but also how do we continue to ensure that at the end of the day, our companies remain relevant, competitive, and that they continue to change as well. All of these are important. Do we have any other questions in here? Because I want to share with you a highlight from one of the things that's a highlight in the course. It's a highlight of my career, because I got an opportunity to work with two really phenomenal, outstanding leaders that I think more, if every leader were like the two that I had the opportunity to include in this course, we would not have as much employee disengagement, turnover, people not wanting to work, or lack of productivity, and people just not feeling safe and heard, and not feeling like they're treated with respect. If we had leaders like these two, I had to highlight them in the course. So I'm going to spend about 5 minutes or so just giving you a little snippet, a little preview. But I got a chance to talk to Richard Davis, who is the former CEO of US Bank. How many of y'all heard of US Bank? The fifth largest bank in the US. And Richard Davis is a phenomenal CEO. I met him years ago, probably 10, 15 years ago. And I was actually doing some work there, facilitating with his executive team. And he never forgot me. That was amazing. And then I got the opportunity to serve with him more recently in the last 3 years. He was CEO of the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and I'm on their national board. And we had a chance to reconnect, as not luck, but as destiny would have it, that we got a chance to reconnect. And so he was gracious enough to share his wisdom and insight and experiences and some best practices about being a CEO and what he learned as a leader. So I want to go there and I want to share that with you. So allow me, indulge me, because I know you all get a chance to take the course. Now, he was on for about 26 minutes or so. I'm not only going to show you a few minutes of the highlight of my conversation with Richard Davis, and then I want to jump to one more with my best boss ever, who is Steve Miranda, who worked with me at the Society for Human Resource Management. And he just was an amazing, caring, emotionally intelligent, just wicked smart leader who helped me to really grow and become a better leader myself. So here we go. Let's go to Richard Davis. All right. So it's coming in now. Hang on. I got it teed up right here. Here we go.
Pleasure of meeting him nearly 10 years ago while consulting and training with US Bank. And I was immediately impressed by Richard's leadership and commitment to excellence. And then, as destiny would have it, I had the pleasure of serving with Richard on the National Make-A-Wish Foundation board, where he was the CEO. And talk about a transformational, highly respected servant leader. I could spend hours talking about Richard's credentials, his impact, and his legacy, but I'll get right into our conversation so you can see what I see. Hey, Richard, it is amazing to have you here. Thank you for being a part of this important course on LinkedIn about leadership foundations. And I could not have thought of a better person, a better leader to be a part of this, to help share some of the skills and strategies and some of your great advice on how you have been such a phenomenal leader. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Dr. Shirley. I can't think of anyone I'd rather have this conversation with. So thank you for the invitation. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Let me get started on the first question, and feel free, again, as I said, share some of your wonderful advice. Think back to the days when you first became a leader. What advice would you give that leader based on the experience that you have now?
Two things. One is educational, which is I didn't understand the difference between management and leadership.
Wow.
I thought they were the same thing. And because I'd managed people up until some point in time, and all of a sudden you're their boss and not their peer. And I guess to summarize it for me, I figured out that management is doing all the right things and leadership is doing all the right things the right way. It's a
Wow.
big difference. And management doesn't necessarily have followership, but leadership has followership. So you can lead all you want, but if no one's following you, you're actually not leading, you're managing.
I love
That's
it.
number one. Number two, the better one for me is my instincts when I was 30 were remarkably good, but I didn't listen to them as strongly. I let them become overridden by facts and details. And here I am, almost 65, and I wish I had paid more attention to my instincts because they haven't changed. They either are something you do or don't have. But my point is saying, listen to your thoughts, listen to your heart, collect data, don't let it override it, let it be another data point, and then make the right decision and make it swiftly. Just don't linger on any decision because better to get it off and running to adjust along the way than to wait forever to make.
And you have amazing instincts. How did you know at some point? How did you make that shift between now really thinking about, hey, I feel this is the right thing to do, and I'm going to do it versus overthinking it and analyzing yourself out of following your instincts?
Well, good question. So first is almost every part of my career, I was promoted to manage people older than me. And so just through a survival instinct, I learned that the only way to win people over, even if you already know the experience that they have, is you can't cheat time. And so I learned early on to ask people, my new subordinates, to give me the benefit of what they've learned over time. Two things happen. One is they get to talk about it, and they're very proud of their experience. And two is you learn to listen. And I don't know that I ever practiced listening very well as a manager because I already knew the answer. But as a leader, I knew that I needed to understand more about history and more about experiences. And I couldn't cheat that by having just jumped into the job. So first and foremost would be to listen more with authentically. I'm going to use that word a few times. People do things because it looks good because they're told to. Only do things eventually that are right for you because it'll come through if it's not authentic. But listening is a brilliant technique for leadership because you've then included people in the process in some indirect manner and allowed them to be part of the solution.
That's right, Richard. I appreciate you sharing that because I think listening, not only is it one of the most critical skills of leaders, of anyone, but I also think it's so underutilized, and we could certainly do a lot more of that.
I agree with that.
Yeah, you also mentioned too, Richard, that you, in your roles, that you came in more as a younger leader leading older people, and thinking about the workforce of today and in the future, it's gotten much younger. Right now, we've got a domination of the younger generation of Gen Y and Gen Z, who are also going to be leading probably more of the older workers as well too. Who, by the way, many of them are exiting the workforce and or either working part time. What advice would you give even to some of the youngest of our leaders who may be coming in and leading people who are older or more senior or more seasoned than they?
I'm going to say this, I could be challenged and wrong, but today's young leaders will gain wisdom, gain experience, they will age, they will collect other people's experiences, and they'll look more like the old leaders one day than maybe the young leaders of today. So there's nothing wrong with morphing and becoming a more wise and mature person. But to answer the question about young people, what I would say is the same answer. As a young person, you have a lot to learn from people who have been around.
That's right.
They're not smarter. It's called wisdom for a reason because it's not knowledge, it's wisdom, experiences and reactions to experiences. What I like about today's workplace, especially at leadership level, is you have to become in tune with your employees. You must, or you can't lead them, back to my point. And so
That's right.
listening is a trait for a leader, but speaking up would be the trait for the young leader. I've had regrettable losses when people move on. And when that would happen, I would often do an exit interview. And the thing I learned over the years were the people that I lost that mattered to me were because we didn't pay attention to what they wanted. But in every case, they never said what they needed.
Wow.
So, what I would say to young leaders is let it be known when you're ambitious what you would like to do one day. Make it clear you like what you're doing right now and you're all in where you are. But if you think people are going to guess what you want to do next or appreciate that you have an ambition to do something entirely different than you're doing today, They won't, and they'll disappoint you, and then you'll leave disappointed. And part of it's on you. So as a young leader, speak well about where you are and let people above you know your intentions without, making the point that you've lost the interest with where you are right now.
How
Mic on. So I hope you got a lot of really good tidbits just in that little small segment. Look, it goes on for another 20 minutes or so. Wonderful conversation, rich, rich, rich. If you want to hear from a CEO and him opening up to be authentic and transparent and vulnerable, Richard Davis was definitely an amazing, amazing leader to have as a part of this course. It makes the course so much more enriching and inspiring and empowering when you hear from other leaders. What did you get from him? If you would tell me one of the takeaways just in those 3 to 4 minutes I just shared with you, what was your takeaway from Richard? Oh, good. Hey, Michelle. Michelle's on as well. I'm still seeing some. I see Lo Surdo. How you all doing? I see Dr. Michelle, Simone Rencher. Yay. Good, good, good. Someone else has a couple of questions. Which are the main tools to become a great leader? Yes, those are some of the ones that we've been talking about. Some of the main tools is communication, the ability to be flexible, to be able to listen, as you heard Richard and I talk about as well, to be able to ask questions, to find out what people need, to get people on your side to support. And then also it's about your own work. So those are some of the tools, and the course covers a lot more. There's a lot of handouts in the course. I have what we call in the notebook, there's some things that you can access that they're takeaways. I even have you doing some assessments and personal reflection in the course as well. So it's very interactive, very engaging, and it answers some of those questions. Someone else says, oh, thanks for the detailed explanation. Totally agree with some of your points there. So I'm asking too, someone says, I agree, paying attention and constantly learning are one of some of the best ways to embrace change. What else did you all hear in the conversation with Richard? I see wisdom, listening, how important that was. Enjoyed the snippet. Good, wise words, listening authentically to your employees, letting people share their experiences, right? Did you hear him say a lot of times we don't ask people? He said in the exit interview, he finds out after the fact that he should have been asking them maybe earlier, what are some of the things that they needed? But at the same time, I love hearing what he said. We also don't do a good job of sharing what we need, right? Love, love, love that. Again, I'm saying others people, let people share their experiences to adapt the behavior depending on the personality and the needs of each team member. Good. You also learn how to achieve gradual increase in leadership. So all of these are so important. So I appreciate you all sharing some of those. Thank you. Because the course really does hit on a lot more of that. And I want you to, again, think about what are some ways that you can implement some of these. Someone says the latter point, this is Jurgen, the latter point is he discussed was an eye-opener, making sure you let your management aware of your ambitions. Yep, speak up and let others know what you need. And yes, share what you need. Love, love, love that. Thanks, Charlene. Again, I see a couple of others. Leaders must be courageous. That's so important. And sometimes courage isn't popular, right? Courage is also about the willingness to step up, speak up, and stand up for what's right and what might not be what everybody else agrees to, right? Sometimes it may be sharing an opposing opinion. Sometimes you may have to challenge the status quo, but those are really key and critical traits that you have to have. Anybody else? I'm looking for just a couple. Someone says awesome topics. Yeah, I tried to make this course be as comprehensive as I could because I knew that there are some things that I've been seeing over these last few years of how much leaders are missing the mark and not really going to the lengths that they need in order to truly give the teams, the individuals, and people that they need. What they need every day, what they need, and that they have needs, and asking what those are. Love, love, love those. So a couple of other things too that I wanted to hit on. As we think about too in this course with the leadership foundations is, like I said too, this isn't for new leaders and it's certainly not for just only executives. Absolutely. Excuse me. This is for every leader at every level, especially if you've got some emerging leaders. Did you hear Richard also talk about how important it was to make sure that as a young leader, you also recognize that there's wisdom if you may be managing older workers as well. Look, the one thing I want to do now is I want to give you a snippet of my best boss, Steve Miranda, and to hear us talking a little bit more too about some of the lessons that he's learned in his career as well. So hang on, I'm going to bring that up in just a second. I want to kind of tee it up a little bit for you. Here we go.
And today, a good friend. In so many of my keynotes, consulting, and in my books, I talk about Steve and the impact that he had on my career and my life's trajectory because he wasn't threatened by my ambition. He saw the best in me and he made space for me to shine. Hey, Steve, I am so excited to see you. I'm like a kid in a candy store. I have been waiting for this moment to have this conversation about this important topic of leadership. I've been spending time going through a bit about skills and competencies and how the global workforce and marketplace is changing, and what are some of the things that we need to be thinking about. And I could not have thought of a better person to bring on than one of the people who I consider one of the best leaders on the planet. So thank you so much for being here, Steve.
Thank you, Shirley. It is indeed truly an honor to be working with you and seeing just the tremendous success you've had in the long time we've known each other.
So let's start first with thinking back to the days when you first became a leader. What advice would you give that leader based on all of your experience now?
Well, the first thing I'd say is I made a lot of mistakes when I first became a leader. A little bit of background, I was in the technology field. I was a software developer. And on Friday, I was playing softball with my teammates. And on Monday, I was promoted to the technical manager role, and I was doing their compensation and performance reviews. 17 direct reports with literally no management training to go into that role. So lesson number one was let go. You know, there's a reason they're on your team there. They're competent, they're capable. You have to figure out a way to leverage their talents. I think the second thing I really learned was I needed to trust myself more, that I needed to be okay with being uncomfortable, that that's part of your growth as a leader, which is, you know, whatever age you're at when you first get into a position of managing people, you don't know it all. You absolutely don't know it all. And you need to give yourself that latitude to say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and pick it up. And Shirley, I would say the third biggest lesson I learned was that there's a big difference between management and leadership. For me, management is about complexity. How many people do I have? What are the customer requirements? How do I put all these pieces together? What are my critical dependencies? There's a lot of stuff moving around, right? Leadership is about change. How do you help people think about why the way we're doing things now is not going to be sufficient to what we need to do tomorrow? How do we as individuals need to upgrade our skill sets? How does the organization need to think differently? Leadership is about change. It's not simply about managing complexity.
And might I say, boom, that was awesome. Look, here's the thing Steve and Richard did not know each other, but because they are such phenomenal leaders, you can also see that they had some things in common. They shared some things that, neither one of the other one knew that they were sharing. What did you hear that was very similar to what Richard shared? But what were some of your takeaways from Steve? And there's so much more. Steve and I had another conversation about 20 more minutes. I'm telling you, you got to listen to these leaders because these are the ones that are giving you real time wisdom and insight that, look, if you don't have a mentor and you don't have a coach, you need to go listen to Richard and Steve in this video because they will give you some nuggets that will help save you some time, energy, and embarrassment. All right. So yes, that was good. Leadership is about change and not managing complexity. Love, love, love that. Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, I like this. It's for every leader at every level. All can benefit. Love that. And then when someone else says too, that leadership is about change. Yes, it is. There's a difference between leadership and management. I love, love, love that. And then too, you heard Steve talk a little bit more about authenticity as well, how important that is. I love it. And so as we think about our own role, let's think about too how it continues to change, and that we as leaders, as one thing Steve said was, we don't know it all. So as leaders, let's not come across to our workers or to our teams and colleagues and clients. Let's not come across as a know-it-all. I got all the answers. I can never admit I'm wrong, and I can certainly never ask for help. I love that. Someone else says they learned too from that one is trusting myself to others was a challenge. But the best lesson for me was to be willing to learn myself. And that is the key and critical piece about this course and about this work on leadership, is that we constantly are on this journey to learn more about ourselves and how we can become a better version of who we are. I want to invite you all again to take the course, have your leaders take the course, go there with the time you have and write notes and go through the assessments, access all the handouts and the activities that I've included in the course. And if you still want more information about leadership, there's a couple of other courses that I do have in LinkedIn. One is on inclusive leadership. I'm very excited about that one. That's already there. And if you as a leader want to get a seat at the table and make it count, there's a course I have for you as well. And if you want to know how to develop accountability as a leader, that one is there too. Now, I also have some really, really, really good news, and that is this month in June, because remember I told you I was in carpentry at LinkedIn in January, I was recording 2 courses. My next course is coming out in just another 2 weeks, and that course is on DEI metrics. How do you track, report, and measure DE&I? And it's going to be an amazing, comprehensive course on all the things that we need to do as leaders to be a part of the journey of DE&I and holding ourselves accountable, but also holding the teams and our direct reports accountable as well. So that is coming this month. Look for it on LinkedIn Learning. And guess what? I just signed another contract to write another course that's going to be coming out later this year. So I am a proud LinkedIn Learning popular author because of you. I want to thank you for your support. Thank you for being here today. And again, thank you for staying connected with me. I look forward to seeing you on my next LinkedIn Live. Have an amazing rest of the day.